He was pulled over for driving too slowly, because to one young officer, that was all the reason he needed. Officer Cutler saw an old black man behind the wheel and assumed power would stay on his side. He assumed silence. He assumed fear. But he was wrong. The man he stopped that day was Henry Earl, a retired federal judge, a man who had spent a lifetime upholding the very law now used to humiliate him. They didn't know they were messing with someone who had written decisions read by courts across the country, someone who once held a courtroom so quiet you could hear history breathe. What came next wasn't just justice. It was a reckoning, one that started on a dusty roadside and rippled all the way to Washington. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man, it's about all of us. Twilight settled gently over the back roads of Alabama. Pine trees swayed in the wind, and an old gospel song hummed low from a Buick's dashboard. But beneath the calm lay tension, a silence about to be broken. Henry Earl didn't drive fast. Never had, never would. At 74, his hand still rested steady at the top of the wheel, tapping gently in rhythm with the old gospel songs playing low from the dash. That afternoon in late October, the Alabama air was still thick, the sky gray like brushed steel, and Route 49 stretched before him like a memory that refused to end. He wasn't in a hurry. He had just left his sister's home in Wilcox County. She had packed him 2 plastic tubs of oxtail stew. For later, she said with a wink, and reminded him, like always, to call when he got home safe. The containers sat beneath a dish towel in the passenger seat, nestled like precious things. His car, a 1996 Buick Roadmaster, had once been his wife Evelyn's pride. Cream-colored outside, burgundy leather inside, and always carrying the faint scent of lemon oil and aftershave. She used to polish it every Saturday morning. She'd been gone 6 years now, but her presence stayed in the softness of the seat, in the gospel tapes still queued up in the glove box. Henry wore his Sunday shirt, crisp and white, though it was just Tuesday. He always said, "You don't dress for the moment you're in. You dress for the life you expect." Old habits, from his days as a courtroom lawyer and later a quiet federal judge. Though now retired, he still carried himself like someone who had to earn respect the hard way. To those who passed by, he may have looked like any elderly black man driving alone through the back roads of Alabama. But to those who knew, he was a man of great substance. Still, as the trees thickened and the radio hummed behind him, a creeping question began to stir in his chest, an old familiar warning. Was he still seen for who he was, or only what he looked like from behind the wheel? He glanced in the rearview mirror, nothing but a long, empty road. Not yet. But something was coming. It came without warning. A sudden burst of flashing blue in the rearview, piercing the calm like a slap. Henry eased his Buick onto the gravel shoulder, smooth and slow, as the patrol car roared behind and stopped inches from his bumper. He turned off the radio, shifted into park, and placed both hands flat on the steering wheel, fingers spread wide like wings in surrender. He had done this before, too many times. Out of the mirror stepped a young officer, white, stocky, no partner. His walk was tight with tension, hand already hovering near his holster. No greeting, no explanation, only barked orders. "License and registration, now." Henry spoke gently. "Certainly, officer. My name is Henry Earl. I'm reaching," I said now. The voice wasn't just harsh. It was loaded with something else, something cold and taut from somewhere deeper than training. "My ID is in my inner coat pocket," Henry said, keeping still. "I'll move slowly." And he did, deliberate, 2 fingers at a time, pulling out both his license and the gold-edged federal identification card that bore the seal of his former judgeship. The officer snatched them both. Grover glanced briefly, then tossed the federal ID onto the dashboard like a gum wrapper. "What the hell is this?" Henry didn't answer immediately. He'd learned that calm wasn't weakness, it was armor. "That's a federal identification," he said. "I served as a federal judge for 22 years. But the young man was already done listening. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, I assure you." "Step out, now." Henry opened the door, slowly, painfully. The gravel crunched under his worn leather shoes as he rose. His knees protested. His back ached, but he did not resist. The officer ordered him to face the car, to spread his legs. Then came the pat-down. Rough, aggressive, searching not just for weapons, but perhaps for proof that this old man didn't belong in that nice car on this quiet road. Isn't it strange how a man can serve justice his whole life and still be treated like a threat just for existing? He said nothing as the officer rummaged through the car, tossing aside the Tupperware, brushing Evelyn's gospel tape to the floor. Henry simply stared at the pine trees. Henry didn't move. His hands were still on the hood of the Buick, hot from the sun, his fingers stiff and tingling. Behind him, the officer, still unnamed, still unsmiling, was muttering into his shoulder radio, waiting for something. Maybe confirmation. Maybe... Then came the crunch of tires on gravel. Another car rolled up behind them, slower this time. A county cruiser with a gold star on the side door. Out stepped a middle-aged deputy, Hispanic, with a slight limp and clay-colored boots. He shaded his eyes and took a moment to assess the scene. The moment he saw Henry, something shifted. "Judge Earl?" His voice cracked slightly. Henry raised his head just enough to see the man's face. "This afternoon, Deputy Morales," he said, almost in a whisper. The young officer, still hovering near the cart, froze. Confusion flickered across his face. Morales walked closer, eyes narrowing, not at Henry, but at his colleague. "You didn't recognize him?" "He didn't say who he was," the officer snapped. "He wasn't following commands." "And gave you ID," Morales said calmly, stepping past him. Then, softer, to Henry, "Sir, you don't need to stay like that. Please, stand up." Henry straightened slowly, dusting off his slacks out of habit, though no dust clung to him. His back ached. His pride? Not broken, but bruised. "Thank you, Deputy," he said. Morales turned to the younger man. "Why did you stop him?" "He was going under the limit. Suspicious behavior," the officer muttered. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. Have you ever watched someone realize, too late, that they were wrong about you? Morales' jaw clenched. "Sir," he said to Henry, "would you like to file a statement?" Henry nodded once. "I would. And I want his treatment of my credentials on the record." The officer looked away. And suddenly, Henry wasn't the only one under a microscope. By the next morning, Henry Earl's name was everywhere. The body cam footage had been released, no edits, no commentary. It showed everything. The contempt in the officer's tone, the way the federal ID was tossed aside, the calm restraint in Henry's voice. Within hours, the video was shared across social media, local news, then national headlines. But Henry didn't watch it. He sat in his study, hands folded, listening to the soft hum of his old house, the click of the clock on the mantel, the distant thud of tree branches in the wind. He had nothing to prove. He had lived his life on record. What else could a man say when the footage already spoke louder than words? His phone rang endlessly. Reporters, law clerks, even a message from the White House press office. But he let them all go to voicemail. He didn't need a microphone. He needed stillness. Have you ever been so tired that even vindication felt heavy? Outside, something was shifting. A small protest began in his hometown. No signs of rage, just quiet determination. College students held signs that read, "He stayed calm." They kept weapons, and respect is not optional. A young man named Rayvon started a blog called No More Warnings, a space for young black men to share their stories. And quietly, changes followed. Deputy Morales was promoted to a training post where he began teaching new recruits about de-escalation and implicit bias. The young officer Cutler was suspended, then resigned. No press conference, no apology, just a quiet exit. That was enough. Henry didn't gloat. He didn't march. He simply watched, eyes calm, heart unsure. Had this truly changed anything? Or had he just been lucky enough to be recognized in time? The ache in his back hadn't faded, but something else had started to ease. The weight of having spoken, of not letting it pass. A week later, the Selma Community Center smelled of folding chairs and old carpet. No stage, no spotlight, just a microphone, a podium, and Henry Earl, standing in his gray Sunday suit, worn shoes planted on scuffed linoleum. There was no press, no camera crews, just people, young and old, veterans in hats, teenagers in hoodies, church ladies with lace fans, all gathered because word had spread. Judge Earl is going to speak. Henry didn't bring notes. He didn't need them. "I'm not here to talk about me," he began, voice steady, soft. "I'm here to talk about us." A hush fell over the crowd. "I've been pulled over before. I've been overlooked before. But I've never stopped being who I am. And yet to some eyes, that's never enough." He looked out at the small boy sitting cross-legged in the front row. "We tell our children that if they speak clearly, dress respectfully, and follow the rules, they'll be safe. But we know now that's not always true. That lie can break something inside them." There was a pause, long and heavy. "Have you ever had to unteach your children something you once swore was safe?" Henry continued. "A uniform doesn't see your resume. It doesn't see your prayers, or your mother's hopes, or the hours you spent earning respect. It sees what it wants to see, unless we teach it to look deeper." He paused again, eyes sweeping the room. "I didn't speak out to be celebrated. I spoke so others wouldn't stay silent. Silence doesn't keep us safe. But truth? Truth has a way of outlasting fear." The audience stood, not with noise, but with reverence, not clapping, just standing. Later that night, back in his study, Henry wrote down a single line on a notepad, something he'd been carrying in his heart since that roadside moment. "The protection of the powerless is the essence of power." There are moments in life when the world seems to forget who you are. You may have given decades to your work, raised a family, served your country, or helped your community. But then one day, someone looks at you, not with respect, but with suspicion. That hurts. And it's tempting to fight back with anger or to shrink into silence. But as Henry Earl showed us, strength doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it's in the way we breathe through injustice, stand tall even when bent by years, and speak with calm when our hearts are breaking. Dignity is not something the world hands us. It's something we choose to keep. We cannot control how others see us, but we can control how we respond. And often, our quiet courage becomes the light someone else needed to see. Maybe a younger person is watching. Maybe the world is watching. So even when your voice shakes, use it, not to win, but to stand, not to demand respect, but to show what it really looks like. Because in the end, it's not the robe or the title that defines us. It's the grace we hold even when no one offers it first. In the stillness of his study, Henry Earl lit no candle, played no music, and made no speech. He simply sat with his hands folded, the quiet hum of evening pressing against the windows. There was no applause, no camera, no audience. But that silence, it held power. Not the kind that commands, but the kind that endures. He had faced injustice not with fury, but with grace. And in doing so, he reminded us that survival is its own quiet form of strength. In the weeks that followed, conversations changed. Policies were questioned. A training program was rewritten. But more than that, something invisible began to shift. A soft refusal to look away. Henry never sought to lead a movement, only to tell the truth. And in that simple act, He made sure that what happened on that roadside would not be forgotten. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.